Yo ho ho, dear listeners, and a jolly Masked Chris to all of you. I trust that you all spent a peaceful Masked Chris Eve, unmolested and unmassacred by Captain Masked Chris and his band of demon elf brigands, and that you're now tending to your slow roasted hog and getting blasted off your face on drinks that taste of coconut. Or pineapple. I also hope that you're well stocked up on antacid tablets and painkillers for the semi-comatose festival of pain that is Fat Stephen's Rest tomorrow. I'm delighted to say that it's a very conventional Masked Chris Day where I am, a real scorcher. And I'm just on my traditional Masked Chris Day walk around town. It seems like everywhere around me, the Masked Chris spirit is out in force. On one corner, some little children building sandmen. Of course, this being a built-up urban area, they're more like mudmen, but still. On the next corner, two men outside a pub getting too hot and annoyed and having a fight. And across the street, a man passed out in the full glare of the sun, surrounded by Malibu bottles. Jolly Masked Chris to all. And to all, a good sizzle. Anyway, I'm feeling so rich and flush with the spirit of the season, I thought I'd take this opportunity to get the old microphone out and tell you one of my favourite Masked Chris stories. Let me just grab a seat in the sunshine, in view of the flowering bushes and crumpled disposable petrol station barbecues of summer, and I'll tell you the tale. Now, this isn't one of the old favourites that you'll read in any books or see on telly. This is a story that my mother told to me, and her father told it to her, and so on, way back into the unknowable depths of the family's history. Where it started, nobody knows. Though I did also see it on the back of a seasonally themed packet of Shreddies once. Anyway, it's called Coracle on 86th Street. Little Caroline Learjet loved Masked Chris more than anything. It was her favourite holiday bar none. Better even than the really big ones like National Teachers Recognition Day or Easter Eve or Spleenmas. Yes, Caroline loved Masked Chris most of all, partly because she had a real fondness for roast pork, which her doctor had warned her parents could lead to cardiac issues later in life if left unchecked. But she also just loved piratey things. She loved eye patches, peg legs and big nautical hats. She'd even worn a false fork hand to school for the whole week leading up to Masked Chris last year, though her teacher had eventually asked her to remove it because it might upset the boy in 4B who'd been in that farming accident. Still, Masked Chris was fast approaching, and Caroline was fizzing with excitement and child-safe grog. Just grapefruit juice, Sprite and a few sugar cubes shaken up together. Only one thing blemished her delight, and that thing was Burke Firkington, Year 4's resident bully. Burke didn't do a lot of hitting children because he thought it was a bit gauche. No, Burke's stock in trade was psychological torture, talking people down and needling at their insecurities, generally just being a real turd. The way he decided to be a turd to Caroline on this particular Masked Chris Eve was to march up to her in the junior playground, bat her huge admiral's hat off her head and bark, "Why wearing that, you twit? There's no such thing as Captain Masked Chris." Her ears hot with anger and sugary grog substitute, Caroline turned a defiant look to Burke and retorted, "There is too a Captain Masked Chris, and his vengeance is swift and awful." Burke did a chuckle that he thought was wry and knowing, but came out sounding like a chicken caught on an electric fence and said, "Captain Masked Chris doesn't exist. It's just your parents dressing up and threatening to kill you in the night." The thought of this shook Caroline so profoundly that she was lost for words, and Burke sauntered off, satisfied with his horrid work, pausing only to tweak the nipple of a slightly overweight, body-conscious boy who had until that moment been on the brink of a revelation of self-worth. What a little twat Burke was. Later, once school was done and the children were safely home and the teachers had started drinking, Caroline sat quietly in her living room, barely able to speak. Eventually, her mum and dad finally took a break from browsing their non-monogamous married couples hookup sites and noticed how quiet Caroline had been. They asked if anything was wrong. Wasn't Caroline looking forward to Masked Chris? In a weak, quavering voice, Caroline asked the question she didn't really want to have answered. "Is Captain Masked Chris really real?" Her parents answered that yes, of course he was, but Caroline noticed the little glance they had shared with each other before responding, as if silently conferring over whether Caroline was yet ready to hear the truth. That Masked Chris Eve, Caroline went to bed roiling with anxiety. She had drunk her traditional children's half measure of spiced rum, but she hadn't enjoyed it. Despite her consternation and her desire to see if any buccaneers, real or hoax, turned up at midnight, the exhaustion of the day took Caroline off into a deep sleep. But not for long, because at midnight, on the dot, she was awakened by a deep bellowing laugh. Yo-ho-ho! Caroline almost leapt out of her skin, and her slumberous eyes snapped open to behold a tall, imposing, nautical figure looming over her bed, silhouetted in the moonlight from the window whose curtains had been pulled aside and whose pane had been violently smashed in. "Nice try, Dad," murmured Caroline, regaining her composure. "But I get it. Captain Mast Chris isn't real." "I most certainly am real," said a voice that rasped with far too much malice and far too many shouting-related polyps to belong to her father. "And what's more, unless your mother's a one-legged Trinidadian whore named Alice or Nancy Reagan, I ain't your father neither." With this, the figure jammed its wildly impractical and undeniably authentical silver fork prosthetic into Caroline's bedstead, mere centimetres from the girl's head. She gasped and recoiled, but then the resolve returned to her gut, and the scowl returned to her brow. "Prove it," she growled, with almost equal grit. The behooked shadow instinctively drew its cutlass and raised it to cleave the doubter in twain, but then paused. It seemed to Caroline that this supposed captain felt a glimmer of kinship in how it looked at her. Before she knew what was what, she'd been bundled up in the shadow's arms and deposited in a small ovular wooden dish, like a little lifeboat, but smaller. She looked out over its lip and felt a chill right down to her bones, as she saw nothing below her but the ground, a couple of meters below. The little boat was hovering in mid-air. "What is this?" she exclaimed, and she looked up and was amazed by what she saw. The shadowy figure, now plainly illuminated in the clear moonlight, was revealed to be Captain Mast Chris, in all his one-eyed, one-handed, one-legged glory, and the rigging that he clung to was suspended from the mighty mast of his flying pirate galleon, the Angry Maiden. Along the bow, 100 pointy little heads leered down at her, the ship's stinking crew of demon elves. It was all real. All of it. Some of it? No, all of it. And it all hung in the air in front of her. "Hang on tight to that, Coracle." The captain prodded his silver tines towards the little wooden dish in which Caroline floated. "I'm going to show you just how real I am." With that, the Angry Maiden shot off into the night, with Caroline's coracle dragged along behind by a tow rope that was invisible and magical, but no less strong for it. When they had travelled only a few streets away horizontally and about 1,000 feet vertically, the Angry Maiden pulled up short. So short that the little coracle twanged violently back and forth as if on a bungee rope, and Caroline, clinging to it for dear life, had to work very hard not to chunder. "There!" The captain pointed a spyglass down towards the earth and exclaimed, "86th Street. Now, if my records are accurate, that's where that little mollusk Burke Firkington lives, correct?" Caroline, who had now turned to the colour of healthy moss, nodded weakly. "Angry Maiden, dive!" the captain shouted, and the ship lurched violently again, this time rocketing downwards towards the hard, unforgiving ground. Caroline squeezed her eyes shut tight and waited for impact. But impact didn't come. Violent twanging back and forth did come, yes, but after that she opened her eyes to find that her coracle and the huge galleon had come to rest hovering just beside Burke's house, right outside his first-floor window. Inside, through the crack in the curtains, Caroline could just make out the prostrate form of Burke himself, snoring soundly in his Wolf of Wall Street pyjamas, his right hand still jammed inside a mostly empty bag of cheese puffs. "That him?" the captain barked, and Caroline hesitated for a moment. Could she really unleash a violent horde of sky buccaneers on a child, no matter how unpleasant they might be? "Yes," she said. Yes, she could. There then followed the nauseating sight of the entire demon elf crew pouring off the port bow like a wave, like a liquid made of scabby green skin, straight through Burke's bedroom window. Their reedy little voices screeched in delight, smothering Burke's astonished screams of terror. Through the melee, Caroline could just see that the elves were beating the absolute shit out of the boy. After 18 or so minutes of sound drubbing, the elves dragged Burke to the window and presented him to the captain. "That'll teach you to go around telling people I ain't real," said Mast Chris grimly. "Here, have a satsuma." he added, and tossed the aforementioned waxy fruit through the window. Burke, somewhat dazed from the violent assault, was in no state to react in time, and instead let the satsuma bounce off his left nipple and plummet to the ground below. Then, lightly jostled by the fruit, he collapsed backwards onto his bedroom floor, justly cautioned. As the elves poured back out of the house and onto the ship, Captain Mast Chris swung around on the rigging, close to where Caroline's coracle floated. He glowered at Caroline through narrowed eyes, his big grey mutton chops resplendent in the moonlight, and growled, "Satisfied?" Caroline nodded the smallest nod in the world, almost too afraid to move. Then, the captain's foreboding, craggy face erupted in a huge smile. "Good," he beamed. Then he kicked the coracle over and sent Caroline crashing 15 feet to the ground. She landed upside down in a thorny bush, hopelessly entangled and not sure how to escape, with cuts and bruises all over. As the distant sounds of sea shanties, whittling and debauchery faded into the depths of the night sky, Caroline said to herself, "Yes, Caroline, there is a Captain Mast Chris, and he's an absolute bastard." The end. Lovely one, that, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all as ever for listening to Crowley Time and recommending it to your friends and all that sort of thing. Thanks to those who support the show on Patreon too, especially the executive producers of the show who give a bit extra. They are, of course, Matt Luckcuck, Dr. the Eliminator, Charlie Markley, George Cantor, Katrina Powers, Kim M., Aileen Joins, Tobias Anderson, Rachel Delaney, Paul Tiemann, Laurel Carlson, Samantha Dye and Peter Shanks, Matthew Del Fabro, Meme, James Roberts, Diggory Laycock, Andy Case, Sophie Walker, Michaela McNally, James Rayliff, Gigi Catherine, Amanda Waterman, Brian Shymick, and the inimitable Purple Strawberry. Thanks also to those who've come along to see a live performance of this show lately. If you haven't yet, go to live.crowleytime.com and keep an eye out for more dates when they're announced. There's the final performance of the Depony contingency coming up at the Edinburgh Fringe in August, on sale now, and the first performance of the new live episode, which I should hopefully be able to confirm very soon. And keep an eye on your podcast feed, because in just a few weeks we'll be beginning a new series of Faces of Virtue for the summer, starting with a guest that came to me via friend of the show, stand-up comedian Chris Cantrill. So look forward to that. Oh yes, and there is one last thing I should say before I go. Yo ho ho! Jolly Mast Chris, everyone! Fun. Right. Now, where am I? And, as an extra Mast Chris treat, a preview of a coming attraction follows.
There are such beings as vampires. Some of us have evidence that they exist.
The pieces are all starting to come together. Those red eyes by the cliffs at Whitby, the black dog on the ship stranded in the Esk, the murdered captain, the bat at the window, Lucy sleepwalking. It's like it all creates a giant puzzle.
I could not believe until I first saw.
There has to be something in here, damn it. Nessie can't die like this. She just can't.
This is what I know of vampires. They are not what you have read in storybooks or watched on your screens. They are real, and they will kill.
That's a lot of blood. And in less than a month, too. Man alive, her entire body wouldn't hold it. What took it out?
Firstly, the vampire is strong, 20 times more so than a human being.
No. My master is nearby. He is here now, and you don't matter. Nothing matters.
Second, so long as night cloaks him, the vampire can appear at will in any form, turning to smoke that can slide into cracks no bigger than paper.
I can see dust drifting in through the door. It looks like little glowing specks in the moonlight.
Third, the vampire can, within range, command many animals.
Run! Please! Save yourself! Run!
How then are we to begin our strike to destroy him?
You both want to, what, go in and mutilate her? What have I ever done to you to make you want to torture me like this?
My friends, it is a terrible task that we undertake, and there may be many consequences. What say you?
I think you must have misheard, my friend. Tomorrow is for the ladies, but tonight is mine, and I have been patient long enough.
Dracula 2004 is a brand new noughties era audio drama from Star Strider Productions, inspired by the novel by Bram Stoker. It is written and directed by Francesca Mylod-Ford and produced by Maddie Searle. In this trailer, you heard the following voices: Dr. Floyd Kennedy as Dr. Abriana Van Helsing, Michelle Kelly as Mina Munjal, Dr. Lou Sutcliffe as Dr. Jack Seward, Vin Vox as Quincy Morris, Johnny Chiodini as Patient R, Anusha Battersby as Lucy Westenra, Tom Crowley as Jonathan Harker, Alan Mandel as Arthur Homewood, and Brad Oliver as Dracula. This trailer featured sound design by Maddie Searle, with music by Joash Kari and Kevin MacLeod. Dracula 2004 will premiere in October 2025. Care to take a bite?